the true movie buffs among us, Charles, may recognize that as the Chinatown theme song, not LA Confidential, but there's a good reason why I played that song.
And I'm sure you'll tell us.
I like it.
That's a good reason. Yeah, works for me.
So we were just listening to some really astounding testimony from convicted felon, former attorney, self-proclaimed fool,
and goofball
Michael Cohen.
Yeah.
I mean, who testifies before Congress? I'd call myself a fool. It's like,
That's
great,
right.
bring him up, let him testify.
That's right. I fit right in.
He should run for Congress on that platform.
Yeah, in my spare time, I plan to advise Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on economic policy from prison.
I love it.
I'll get those frequently asked questions right next time. Yeah, the great big green new. Oh my God!
I was sad that Jim Jordan didn't ask Mr. Cohen if he was also an expert on cow flatulence. He could weigh in on that.
Well, yeah. I mean, my biggest takeaway. I was one of those nerds who was up early this morning reading the 20 pages firsthand.
Oh.
And I was every time I hear this guy talk, Cohen. And every time I see any of his work product, I cannot understand how this person held a job at a high level in the Trump organization for as long as he did. I just don't
or
get
even
it.
as a lawyer at all. They asked him about whether or not the purchase of the rights to the life story of Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal was intended to have a chilling effect. He asked them to define chilling effect. I mean, that's like if I were on set and the director said, can we go to a 120 millimeter lens? And I said, could you define lens? What do you mean? How do you not know that?
I know. It's just, it's that would be, one negative takeaway that I would have on President Trump, then just private citizen Trump, continuing to keep this idiot, involved in any way, but let alone in a central way, in matters that could harm and are now harming President Trump. I mean, I question the judgment of letting that guy. We had a phrase. I mean, it's not a common phrase, but it is a common phrase long ago. Of when you're working on these big, high-stakes takeover deals where there's a lot of publicity and a lot of reporters trying to figure out what's going on and traders, et cetera, we would always have this concept of who gets to be in the room where the real decisions are made and who doesn't. And you would even sweep those rooms just to make sure people weren't listening in. And the notion that this idiot, Michael Cohen, was anywhere near a room other than Romper Room in the course of being affiliated with the Trump organization is just mind-numbing. And I don't think he helped himself today at all.
Yeah.
I think you were going to make a comment, I think, about CNN.
Yeah.
But
well, when CNN says you're lying, it's like, wait a minute.
You must be telling the truth.
Well, I mean, again, I was, insults and jokes aside, I was surprised that I was under the impression that chilling effect was a pretty common legal term. I know it from all the lawsuits that have been brought, or the two lawsuits that have been brought against me by individuals who intend to have a chilling effect on the evidence that I've brought forward that indicates that they've engaged in felonies. They're bringing these lawsuits not to seek relief for legitimate claims, but to have a chilling effect on the journalistic efforts and everything that they're trying to do to stop Crowdsource the Truth and stop the monetization of Crowdsource the Truth. How does he not know?
And speaking of chilling effect, I mean, isn't that exactly what the Mueller investigation is? It's Comey and McCabe and Mueller and Hillary and Obama and other people.
Chilling effect on the presidency.
Well, a chilling effect on the presidency, but also a squelching effect on attempts to investigate Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, the Obama administration, the Bushes, and others for a likely obstruction of investigations into these massive, unprosecuted, escalating charity frauds around the world, all of which seem to be tied one way or another to Bill Clinton and to Hillary Clinton, and to a lesser extent to Chelsea Clinton.
I should have had Bill Clinton somewhere in this graphic today.
Isn't he there?
He's probably up in a house somewhere in the hills there.
He's up at Burkle's house, Green Acres.
He's doing something.
Isn't he? I think I see him there, and I think he's wearing a yellow vest.
What yellow vest? Actually, I need to make a mug of the yellow vest. I keep forgetting to do that. Sorry.
What yellow vest?
Exactly. People really enjoy that. So we've got a lot to cover today. We're hoping, Charles, that lauded attorney Sidney Powell will be joining us from CPAC, hopefully in the second hour of the show, but she's very busy and we've yet to get a confirmation from her. So I'll keep my eye on this and hopefully we'll hear from Sidney. I always enjoy her input and it'll be great to hear what she has to say about a fellow lawyer, although it's hard to really. No. Do you think there's a specific class of idiot lawyer that you need when you're interfacing with porn stars and stuff? I mean, I'm saying that in a derogatory and joking manner, but I mean, for real, is Donald Trump having a lawyer who's sort of like dealing with the low-level people? Is that what Michael Cohen's role is?
Kind of like a JV and a varsity, like the ISIS, they're just JV, Al-Qaeda, and that kind of idea?
I guess.
I mean, somebody, for example, who couldn't pass even the DC bar and had to go out to Arkansas and slip in that way and then surrendered her law license along with Bill? I mean, that kind of person?
We could make a list of rogues gallery of lawyers, like all the lawyers who Congress has stripped of their law license.
I mean, it reminds me of, I think I've told you this before, but many, many years ago, actually 30 years ago, I lived downtown in Barrow Street in a building where there were all these famous rap musicians.
Oh yeah, you've told me this story.
Yeah, and
That's great.
And there was this guy who had a purple Rolls Royce. And its license plate, I think, was like, either its license plate or on the side of it, it said 1-800-TUSH.
He's the ass man, Jerry.
Exactly. Well, and this guy was everywhere. He had billboards on the subway and everything, and he was advertising his class. And it turned out that this guy had performed something like 4,000 different butt transplants, boob transplants, and he never went to medical school.
Oh my God.
You know, so there are plenty of people, who play being lawyers, right? And I think, but when you go and you meet really top-notch lawyers, you understand that that is not Michael. Michael Cohen is not in that group.
No, definitely
not.
Not.
He's one of these lawyers who thinks that he's actually a businessman. He's like the Fargo stuff. I'm a principal here, not an agent. Right?
This whole thing was my idea. They were like, ooh, ixnay on that.
Right.
You realize everyone in this room except for Jim Jordan hates Donald Trump, right? So, serious question though, Charles. How many times in history has a person who has been convicted of perjury for lying to Congress, then returned as a witness, as the key witness at a hearing before Congress?
I could take you one better than that. Alcee Hastings was impeached, ALCEE, was impeached, I believe, as a judge in Florida for some, I don't know exactly for what, and I believe he's serving in Congress right now.
Oh my God.
So, and then there's that internet thing that goes around that says, which organization is this? 100 people have been disciplined for this, 50 for that. It's
got to be Congress.
And it's definitely Congress.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of, there's that movie Bad Teacher. There are a lot of bad Congress people.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you think it would be like the what was John Gotti's crime family called?
Gambino, was
the
it?
Gambino crime family, but it's like, nah, that's Congress.
That's right, yeah. Think about it. You go to Congress, and you immediately can say, well, you can't investigate me now. I mean, that's a political case.
Right.
And you get to trade on insider information, the way the law is presently written.
Really?
Yeah.
What? How can that possibly be?
Well, they argue that it's the argument that I think Truman used at one point long ago, that how could a president of the United States act in anything other than a way that would benefit the United States? You ought to give certain privileges and immunities to the president, and then that argument.
President Truman the Tiger?
No, President real Truman, Harry Truman. Also, I suppose, from the great state of Missouri.
Oh, is that why they named the tiger Truman?
Probably. They probably named, knowing the way BKD operates, they probably named it Truman because they thought that's where John F. Kennedy was born.
Well, because sometimes they can write TRU, man. Sometimes they would TREW, TRUE, and they can mix it up and confuse people.
That's right.
Whose tax
when
returns.
They're cooking the books.
Who's doing Truman the Tiger's tax return?
BKD.
Of course, of course. Well, Charles, maybe let's get right to.
Well, don't jump. We've been giving short
sorry.
shift to the art department here. I mean, I think we'll get to the number of shows this is. I believe we're pushing up to 145. I think already.
Something like that. And you just mentioned not giving short shift to the art department.
Or shrift.
But it did come out that Adam Schiff was giving short shift to Michael Cohen before the hearing. Totally inappropriate.
What was he doing?
Michael Cohen said that he had met with Adam Schiff.
Shifty?
Prior to this hearing.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
And Jim Jordan was like, whoa, he said something like that in the hearing.
Yeah. But this is another great poster, movie poster, and to be added to the coffee table book, which at this point is going to be like the Gutenberg Bible. It's going to be so big. but honestly, what we were searching for, other than trying to find a good-looking picture of Hillary Clinton, which
very
is,
hard,
not going to happen, but. The basic storyline here, and it seems to be the plot that no one in Congress or the lamestream media or academia wants to focus upon, is that this has all been a project to cover up the overarching failures of unregulated globalism implemented first starting in 89 by George H.W. Bush, then on the shoulders of Slick Willie and his team, then into W, and then into Obama. These people on the right of the poster are doing, I think we're going to find out if there's a serious investigation ever, that they have been doing the bidding of Hillary Clinton, and I suppose Barack Obama's everywhere, but and their best to cover up Barack Obama's role in allowing, and his administration's role in allowing the Clinton Foundation charity fraud complex to get bigger and bigger and bigger, even as all these people had a hand one way or another with actually, in theory, upholding the law. So it's I love the images that the art department came up with.
Thank you.
I know you typically spend 7 to 8 weeks on each one of these.
I'd still be working on the second one.
But it's masterful.
Thank you. I have developed a library of excised heads of political figures. photographic library. But, and with that, I think we will just dive right into the slides. That way, hopefully, if Sidney Powell can join us, we'll have plenty of time to speak with her.
Yeah, and should she actually come in at around 6, she wants to be on for up to half an hour, so we'll hold her to that. And I've tried to divide the presentation up so that we can do an hour or so, excuse me, of non-Sidney Powell things, and then have her
all things Sidney Powell.
And then depending on whether she is or is not with us, we'll rip through the remaining slides or not.
Yeah.
So anyway, the real question in my mind as I go through the thousands of pages of notes that I have to try to organize them is just how long has this been going on? That famous song, how long has this
been? We should have used that song.
We should have, we could always use that one.
Yeah.
But, and to put that mosaic, or the pieces of the mosaic and the puzzle together, I think we have to do more investigation. The crowd can help us on this, on each of the major league players in this. What are there's so many husband and wife couple pairings here that, we haven't really teased out. Does Bob Mueller's wife have family connections to the Bushes or
the Bars,
or, whatever? We haven't done all that work yet. But it certainly seems to me, and that's why I don't like going to Washington, D.C., because every time I go down there for whatever purpose, I'm always lectured to that I don't understand the way the world works, that every firm in Washington, D.C. has to have Republicans and Democrats. There can't be just
every
a Republican
law firm, you mean?
Every firm, consulting firm, banking firm, investment firm, you name it, especially a law firm, accounting firm. You have to do it that way under a theory that sometimes Republicans will be in charge, sometimes Democrats will be in charge, and if you organize your firm in that way, you're always going to get a piece of the swamp. I don't buy that at all. I prefer to have a firm maybe not in Washington, D.C., but concentrating on national political and economic investment issues that is principally composed of people who are anti-fraud and like to be correct.
Oh, come on, Charles. That's ridiculous.
Not people who will accommodate the scumbags, in the Republican Party and the scumbags in the Democratic Party and just play along with the game. That's why I don't like to go to Washington, D.C.
You know what I've noticed, Charles? When I was in L.A., it's sort of like almost everywhere you go, everybody is talking about the film industry and their acting career and what movies there. It's very difficult to find somebody in Los Angeles who is not somehow connected to the entertainment industry. And in Washington, D.C., likewise, when you go to parties or restaurants or whatever, everybody is talking about politics. Right. But in New York City, you can't say like, all right, I'm going to walk into this restaurant and the first person I'm going to meet is going to be could be anything.
Right.
But you can't swing a dead cat in LA without hitting somebody in the movie industry, or in DC without hitting a lobbyist or a politician.
And the other thing I hate about Washington, D.C., you go and start talking to people in the political world, and you'll hear, especially people like Hillary and others, they'll say, well, I really care about this set of issues, and I care about that set of issues. I don't care what you care about. I care about the fact that we've doubled the national debt in 8 years from 10 trillion to 20 trillion. That I care about. And generally speaking, when you have too much debt, there's a good way and a bad way to solve the problem. The bad way is to go bankrupt, which the country better not do. And the good way is to figure out how to spend less each day and apply the monies that you would have spent on spending to paying down your debt. It's that simple. I don't want a whole bunch of pointy-headed bureaucrats, thinking about this policy and cow fart policy and trains to Tokyo.
How to build a train to London.
to Tokyo, and I'm just not interested in all that. I mean, the Alien Welcoming Committee plan and all that stuff. I mean, let's get down to actually paying down the debt. It's that simple.
They don't seem to be able to do that.
And to that end, Donald Trump, I mean, we have this, it is name dropping, but he's a longtime friend, Jerome Powell. And I love the interchange that has not yet gotten enough press concerning his appearance before the House panel of financial crazies, otherwise known as the Financial Services Committee or whatever it is, chaired by Maxine H2O Waters. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is on the committee. I mean, there's this new thing called modern monetary theory. Have you heard what that is?
No.
Modern monetary theory, and of course Ocasio is a big fan of it, is that debt and deficits don't matter.
Oh, yeah.
And
cow farts, that's where
that's
it's all
right, at. And so to basically, so she has been espousing this, and yesterday Powell was questioned in the Senate, what did he think about modern monetary theory? And he says basically, he didn't say it this way, but he basically said it's a cow fart. I mean, it just makes no sense to dwell on the idea.
This is the head of the Fed who said this? Now, so he's appointed by Donald Trump, and who did he replace?
Well, technically, he replaced Janet Yellen, but technically he was first appointed to the Federal Reserve Board by Barack Obama, which is interesting. He is a Republican.
Why should we trust the Federal Reserve at all, Charles?
Well, there are many problems with the Federal Reserve, but it's like saying, there's some debates I'd like to have about, for example, I don't know, putting the Clintons in jail. That's something that I think we should talk about.
Yeah.
But trying to debate, whether there are 24 hours in the day or whether we want to talk about 24 hours times 60 and say that's the number of minutes in a day or whatever. There is a Federal Reserve. It is the most powerful financial institution on the planet.
Yeah.
The globe has way too much debt on it. There is no central regulator of anything on this planet yet, and there's unlikely to be one in the near future. And so, recognizing, as I do recognize, that the Federal Reserve, I think, has been playing a gigantic game ever since creation in 1913 to give people the illusion that things are okay, while asset values just fall because of inflation every year. And you're seeing more and more people realize that this type of approach for a wealthy country like the United States, which is the wealthiest country on earth, you need to have a sound currency.
Right.
Right, and it's a lot more interesting for a gigantic economy like the world's economy is today to be the country with the sound currency where wealth floods into your country from around the world where things are looking shaky than it is to try to compete in a devaluation game with, say, Japan that's got a massive problem, or Germany that will have a massive problem, or these other countries that don't have their act, or China that's going to have a massive problem. So I'm not of a mind that you would take a 105-year experiment, which this is, or 106-year experiment, and just like throw it out the window. I think I would be for incrementally going to real audit on the Fed. Where's the freaking gold? That the Fed actually has. Does it have it or not?
We just had a U.S. Customs agent on the other day who said he was guarding all this gold in San Francisco, and now it's gone.
Yeah.
And of course, many people saw this interview that I did with G. Edward Griffin, famously wrote the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, and he spoke quite a bit at Anarchapulco about what he's discovered about the Fed and concerns that he has about cryptocurrency and the massive debt that we face. So maybe, I don't know, can you call up this guy, Jerome Powell, and be like, WTF?
He, in his role, he can't. Last time I saw him was, I think, 2011 or 12. But I would say that I actually met Alan Greenspan at Jay's first swearing-in ceremony when he was Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Domestic Finance. I was in the cash room at the Department of Treasury, and I want to say it was 1990 or thereabouts. I forget exactly when. And Nick Brady was there. He was the Treasury Secretary. He'd been the chairman of the firm where I worked. And so Jay and I are talking, and Nick comes over, and the three of us are talking, and we're just talking. And Alan Greenspan's over there. He's like, who the hell are these people? So he comes talking to me. And when you go to a party and there's somebody who just won't leave you alone, and you're really bored by that person, that was Alan Greenspan. It was like,
wow.
It was just like, dude, I mean, you don't make that much sense, but I'm just I'm just a banker. So I definitely think that there is an arrogance problem at the Fed that I think that Ben Bernanke, more and more people are now saying what I said at the time, that Bernanke's quantitative easing was a disaster. It only made the problem, it gave the illusion that things were okay, but instead locked central banks and big governments into a damaging long-term game that we're going to have great difficulty escaping from. So,
what is Bernanke doing now that he left the Fed?
I don't know. He's supposedly a decent human being, and of course, back at the time, it's easy for me to say, just as one American citizen, that without any responsibility to make sure the global system doesn't melt down. It's easy for me to say the guy made a whole bunch of mistakes. But at the time, in September, October, November 2008, and in early 2009, we came really close as a global society to actually having everything blow up.
Financially.
Right.
People are asking in the comments, do you know Wayne Jett?
No.
I never heard of him. The Fruits of Graft, The Great Depression, Then and Now. He's an author.
I do not know. I will look that person up.
Yeah, Wayne Jett.
I know of, who's the guy? Was it Joan Jett, the singer?
The Blackhearts. You love rock and roll, Charles.
And then there was another Jett who was a Kidder Peabody trader who...
Benny and the Jets?
That's right, the Jet Sons. Anyway,
exactly.
So what we started to say is, Donald Trump really does have an opportunity here that he, I think, has to seize upon well before November of 2020, in that, not just because it's really our issue that you and I have been focusing on with others, but you can't, one of the devices that the swamp uses to feather its own nest adroitly is crooked charities. And that is the reason the Clintons have 3 mansions now that we know about, and who knows how many others that we don't know about, is they exploited loopholes in the regulatory scheme in place that are supposed to catch this charity fraud. And if Donald Trump does not do something well before November 2020, assuming he runs, he is not going to win, because he will lose a lot of people who have said, look, why should we put you in for another 4 years so that you get closer and closer and more swampy? You had 4 years to take. We gave you this massive, gigantic meal already set, everything. You didn't have to have any alcohol with it, but other people.
All Burger King.
It's all there for you. And it's good stuff, and all you had to do was just get your team to follow obvious pathways, and you would really drain, by my estimate, something like between $250 billion and $500 billion out of these crooked charities that could be used in a one-time payment, or maybe over a couple of years, to dramatically pay down the debt, and also to send a strong message to the Ivy League that's exploiting loopholes in the way in which educational institutions are allowed to operate with big endowments and feathering the nest of the presidents and professors. You could send a message to these, the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is about as close to being a charity as Al Capone was, and many others like it, the Clinton Foundation, too many to be named in this broadcast, but including all the ones we've already talked about. You would have a chance to simply apply regulations and laws that are on the federal and state books to just make an example of these crooks. They'd be singing like canaries, all of them, ratting at each other, and it would lead to a cascading process where more and more whistleblowers would come forward, and more tales of criminality would be revealed, and more law firms, rather than risk going out of extinction. Take one, Williams and Connolly. I'm not a lawyer, but I really question how Williams and Connolly exists as a law firm, given the central role played by David Kendall, a prominent partner, and this other guy, Bob Barnett, who gets all the book deals for all the politicians. Given the role that Kendall has played, obstructing, in my mind, of investigations, required investigations of the Clinton Foundation, and all this criminal inurement and all these other problems, so I'm willing to be patient, and I've been very patient here. This is almost 4 years that I've been at this, and I don't expect it to be cured overnight. But on the other hand, you put this out here, at a certain point, we need to see indictments, we need to see convictions, and we need to see, serious jail sentences, not simply for the Clintons, but for others who may have run roughshod over, frankly, the generous spirit of the American public in engaging in insider trading and financial hooliganism during the 2000 period under Bush. Very few of the people who brought the global economy towards the precipice, nearly pushing us all over it, very few of those individuals have been sent to prison for meaningful jail terms. Yet, we regularly send economically disadvantaged people engaged in drug dealing. They go away for 10 years and 20 years or longer.
Well, speaking of Williams and Connolly, I do believe that's the law firm that Lynn Ulbricht told me was representing Ross Ulbricht when he got stuck in jail for 2 life sentences for simply creating the website, the Silk Road, upon which other people did illegal transactions. So I don't understand how YouTube and Twitter and everybody who's making all kinds of threats and conducting harassment operations and money laundering operations with their help, I don't understand how they're protected by Section 230 of the DCA, but poor Ross Ulbricht goes to jail for the rest of his life when he's represented by the very same law firm you're talking about.
Right. So maybe if we jump into the standard slide with a disclaimer, we can remind people that this is an ongoing interactive exercise. It is you and I doing most of the talking on the podcast, but I know, because there's follow-up after every one of these involving email and other communications, that so many of you, and we appreciate, Jason and I really appreciate your interest and activity, so many of you have been helpful, moving governments, moving investigative journalists around the world to take this matter seriously. Again, we can report, I began on this with my first, story came out in March of 2015, focused on the Clinton Foundation. But in all this time frame, we have received exactly no complaints from any portion of the Clinton charity fraud network, any individual, any...
Some nasty tweets.
But nobody has contacted us to say you're wrong on this.
Correct. Correct.
Right? And so after a certain point, 4 years of this, and a heck of a lot of information, whether spoken, viewed, written, or otherwise, has been out there in the public domain imploring the government regulators, the IRS, the criminal side of the IRS, not just the civil.
I thought the whole IRS was criminal.
No. I mean, there are many fine IRS people, but the people who should be regulating this massive charity fraud, especially because it is run in the name of two people and their bratty daughter, to promote the narrow interests, political and personal, of the Clinton family in the guise of supposedly being a truly independent public charity, which is just a nonsense of a proposition to begin with. We've had no contact saying, stop. We've had no criticism of any detail or any major piece of our analysis. And so enough's enough. At a certain point, the IRS has enormous resources. We see what happened when the FBI and the DOJ and the special counsel decided to raid Michael
Stone.
Cohen or Roger Stone or Paul Manafort. We see what they can do even to a sitting congressman when they will go after Corinne Brown and a former congressman, Steve Stockman. In theory, and Brown was a Democrat, is a Democrat, Stockman's a Republican. In theory, it is possible to make these wheels of justice actually work. But come on, ladies and gentlemen.
The wheels are off the wagon, Charles.
Yeah, come the F on. Yeah. And so this information that you hear and see and that's on the slides, we've tried to provide links as often as possible so you can check for yourself that what we're saying is accurate. We do appreciate comments and questions to either me via my site or Jason and I and Sydney via Twitter. We've put our handles up there for you to consider. We've got the handy dandy playlist. Where are we, Jason? Have we updated that?
I did update it. We've got all of the 144 shows we've done so far under the Sunday with Charles and the Charles Ortel is Closing In banners in this handy playlist where people can come and review all the hours of evidence that you've provided. It's really a unique resource in that regard, and anybody who's conducting an investigation can save a whole lot of time by coming in here.
Yeah, and I have a great punishment for Hillary Clinton should she be convicted.
Force her to watch all these
No,
episodes?
even better. What we'd connect these episodes, we'd have a random number generator, which would do two things. First, for the easy version, we could have it select one of these things at random, and then the second step would be to select the speed at which it's played. So it's either like 18 RPM, 33, whatever. So she'd have to listen to this, from going for the rest of her life.
And we should just make it like Clockwork Orange, where she's in there with the lid locks, having to look at the thing constantly.
But this is, I guess, our 145th show.
Yeah.
A lot of good content, I think, immodestly, I would say, a lot of good content here. And the reason we're taking so much time and effort on this is because it is difficult to understand the enormous landscape that is occupied by this set of frauds. I mean, it is not simply one honest mistake. It is not, Michael Cohen lying a few times to investigators. This has never been remotely anything approaching a legitimate charity. Not since October 23rd, 1997, when Bruce Lindsay, while still, I believe, working inside the White House, organized, in theory, or incorporated this supposed charity. Not for an instant has this been a legitimate entity. And one of the projects, once we get clear signs that there will be indictments and convictions, will tell the whole story. But we don't want to give the Clintons the opportunity to plead to a lesser set of crimes before the full suite of investigators, federal, state, international, sinks their teeth into this and teaches this political family and the American family a lesson that you don't use a charity to enrich yourselves or to advance your political, or to persecute your enemies. You don't do that. So we'll spend just a few minutes on the first What's New slide. We've covered some of it already on page 3. I mentioned that the 20 pages of his testimony are up here if you hit the first
Now,
thing.
I missed the very first couple of minutes, but Jim Jordan was up in arms that apparently, like the New York Times and CNN got this before the committee did. So that seems to be the new way of doing business if you are, you know, Robert Mueller or somehow investigating Donald Trump.
Right. This to me it's reminiscent of the Lois Lerner experience testifying before Congress. You know, she gets a chance in 2013 at a critical moment. Hillary is still in 2013. Hillary still has all of her emails, not been turned over yet. And Lois Lerner gets up and says, I didn't do anything wrong, and now I'm going to, and gives a speech about how she didn't do anything wrong, and now I'm going to invoke my right against incriminating myself. You know, why should this felon, convicted felon, have a chance to circulate a 20-page puff piece? It's full of crap, frankly.
Well, it draws conclusions, doesn't it? He's saying that Mr. Trump had a campaign based on hate.
Yeah, it's just, these are unfounded allegations. The exhibits are not, there's exhibits referred to, maybe we'll get to see them eventually, but they're not, I haven't read the various exhibits that he attaches here. This is Mr. Trump's, one of his former lawyers. He's a racist, he's a con man, he's a cheat, you know. And then I love the one in here where a little bit further down it starts talking about, and he's hiding the fact that he had poor grades. You know, I mean,
a foot odor, Charles.
No, but come the F on. I mean, in the first place, some of the smartest people I know did very poorly because school just wasn't interesting to them. They were thinking about much more complex stuff, and well, I don't want to be playing with crayons, you know, I want to do. And so there are many people who are off the chart smart who actually don't do well in college.
Yeah.
And if you're going to make an issue, far be it for me to dredge this one up again, but I'm going to, you're going to make an issue of grades. All right, let's see John Kerry's transcripts. Let's see Nancy Pelosi's transcripts. Let's see Al Gore's transcripts. Let's see Barack Obama's transcripts are locked down.
Yeah.
You know, let's see every presidential candidate's transcripts. I don't think they're going to be all that impressive.
No.
You know?
I agree.
So I saw this right away, and I said, you know, this is what we're doing here. We can't win in court, the real court. So now we're going to try Trump in the court of public opinion, right? Now this one here, we're going to take some considerable depth going through it in a few minutes.
BuzzFeed, Charles.
I know, but this is Roger Stone saying Michael Cohen is lying. Now, you know, you don't even want to see a headline like this, let alone in BuzzFeed. But we're going to take you through the timeline of what was going on. Because this morning, second I saw this, I said, oh no, now NBC and ABC and CBS, everyone's going to come back to me about the July 25th, 2016 email that I sent to Napolitano and James Rosen, and start asking me why did I think that, why was I instructing Fox News to go to London and meet with Assange, which of course I wasn't instructing anybody to do anything. So I have, as a present for the crowd, I've put together, I thought I'd just do a timeline, and I'll put up some of the key events that should have suggested to anybody with an IQ above 1 that it was a logical idea to try to get to Assange well before July 25th, 2016. So I thought I'd have a short, maybe 8-point chronology. It's 30 key events. A few of them are after July 25th, but I'll explain why when we get to it. So Stone is right here. I mean,
but wait a second, though. The thing I'm a little concerned about is that he's under this gag order not to publicly comment on his case.
He would argue he's not commenting on his case.
Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation or any participants in his case. And so if he's talking about him speaking to Donald Trump or Michael Cohen, he's just violated the gag order. And I got to tell you something. Larry Klayman hates Roger Stone. I really have no beef with Roger Stone.
Right.
I think what the DOJ has done to him is terrible. And I mean, I do not agree with Larry's overall statement that somebody should have the FBI kick in their door because we don't like them. So, I mean, you know, I understand where Larry's coming from. He's got to jealously protect his client. Roger Stone is saying and doing things that could hurt the case. So he's got to come out really strong against Roger Stone. But this whole thing is just a disaster brought about by this Mueller investigation.
Right. Well, we were listening to before, I think Cohen seemed to claim that this conversation took place on the 18th or 19th of July, 2016. Just hold that thought, and we'll get back into it. I would never try to explain what Roger Stone is actually doing, what his real motivations may be, because he's a man of many motives.
How about Randy Credico?
And Randy Credico, another one, yeah. I mean, these are people who do things for crazy reasons. So we don't need to even go down that crazy hole. We're going to go into our own chronology. In every case, in most every case in the chronology, I point you to a link of where you can see for yourself what was going on, right, and why it was reasonable to want to get to Assange well before July 25th, 2016. So if we jump back into the body there, this was that thing where CNN has concluded that Cohen lied again. And I suppose if you're an inveterate liar, what you're going to do when you swear to tell the whole truth again is prove that you're a liar. And that's in essence what Cohen did. And I love this headline, I would call myself a fool, not a cheat. Okay.
I couldn't believe it when he said that.
Good to know.
At least you're right about that.
Yeah.
But he is also a cheat. They said that he had lied about stuff on bank loans, and they were reading from court judgments.
Yeah.
That is bizarre hearing, Charles.
I don't think, if the goal was to raise the public's opinion of Congress, I think that didn't work.
Yeah.
If the goal was to find more sympathizers for Cohen, that didn't work.
If it wanted to increase the viewership of C-SPAN, I think that worked.
Yeah, it did work.
It's the best show on television. It's comedy, it's tragedy.
This, I don't know if you could, you could translate it without hitting that blue thing. This was just brought to my attention today on a Skype call to we won't say the name, our great friend in Norway. And it turns out that Hillary Clinton's going to be in Norway on March 8th,
wow,
celebrating International Wingnut Day. I mean, Women's Day. I don't mean it as an insult to women. I'm more insulting Hillary.
They don't really have International Women's Day here in the United States.
You know why?
Because every day is Women's Day.
You're good. You're good. But
so
anyway,
what is she going to do there? Another stupid speech about how she hates Donald Trump? Whoa, what are we looking at there?
Those are impersonators, yeah.
Oh my God.
The interesting thing about the story that our Norwegian contact was explaining is that in the Norwegian press, it mentioned that Hillary Clinton is traveling commercial to this event, and people are speculating, why would she do that?
Could you imagine if you were seated next to Hillary Clinton on the flight? I would love it.
Would you? Yeah, you'd love it. Did you hear the one?
For days.
Did you hear the one? I had another thing.
Yeah. Sorry, I got so caught up in the notion of questioning Hillary Clinton on a flight to Norway.
Then we get this. Mark Meadows just apparently, in the middle of Cohen's testimony, slapped him with a criminal referral for admitting to representing foreign clients, but not.
But then later, someone else chimed in and said that there's so many ads on Zero Hedge, it's hard to scroll. Another member of Congress chimed in and said that the question specifically said foreign government clients, and he said he was working for like Korean Airlines or something.
Well, Korean Airlines might well be owned by the government.
Or maybe I misspoke.
Well, so Foreign Agents Registration Act does indeed apply to foreign-controlled corporations and governments. It's not just governments. And we've been through that before.
But perhaps there may have been an error in the thing that they sent him from Congress and how they word. I mean, this is where lawyers, this is where they live, Charles, nitpicking the stupid details of whatever document they sent to your lawyers. Oh, by the way, that's another 25 grand.
Right, exactly. I've got college bills to pay.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, the day is not yet over, and I don't think Cohen did all so well.
No, I don't think so. He's having a rough day.
And then, yeah, this, I mean, the nerve. I mean, Hillary has gotten so used to having an inside game where no one questions anything. But look at where she's saying, Hillary Clinton, Congress should be doing more on the Russia program.
Oh my God, it's all they're doing.
That's
and
right.
There's nothing there.
Yeah. Thanks, Hill. We'll get right on it. You know, Hillary Clinton should do more on the telling the truth probe.
Moron?
I didn't say it.
Oh. Well, I mean, it's interesting, you know. Here's someone who actually should be investigated by Congress saying, hey, why aren't you investigating Trump more?
Now, this is somebody who should be investigated by the serious wing of the FBI, and multiple allied proper investigative organs of many states around the world. So the nerve of her to say this is just, she got nerve.
We've only seen the comedy wing of the FBI so far.
Sad to say.
It's the tragedy wing of the FBI.
Yeah. Now, Mueller did, though, win temporarily here. He won in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. A fellow, I think his name Miller, had challenged whether the legitimacy of Mueller's actual appointment, and apparently in a panel of the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, he won, but there's several next steps. The whole D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals may be consulted, and beyond that, you could take it up to the Supreme Court. So it's certainly going to be, it's not over, but he did win, and I do try to be balanced in the way I report these things, that Mueller did appear to win a momentary victory. It may just be temporary.
Well, it also seems crooked as hell. I mean, they looked at it and they said, yeah, no problem, next case.
That's right.
They didn't bother to look at any of the rules or the facts or the law. Yeah. They just decided, get this Miller guy out of here. We want more Mueller.
Yeah.
That's just crazy. Who was the judge?
It's 3 judges.
Oh, it's 3 judges. So Judith Rogers,
Sri Srinivasan, and Karen Henderson. No idea who those people are.
Interesting story. I'd be curious to see what Larry has to say about that. But yes, somebody sent me a message earlier today saying that Mueller's thing is legitimate, and I was like, what the hell are you talking about? And I guess this is what they were talking about.
That's what they're talking about. And then there was this piece in the Slimes talking about Andrew Goldstein, who is a former high school teacher, a Princeton graduate, high school teacher, which is a good thing to do, actually, who then got into Yale Law School and then ended up, the son of a former prosecutor, he ended up being a key person on Mueller's team. And this is a very positive article extolling the virtues of one Andrew Goldstein, who's only 44 years old.
He looks like he's 60.
I know.
This guy's younger than me.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But apparently he's supposedly fair-minded. Well, we'll soon see.
I don't know about that. How could you work for Mueller if that were the case?
Yeah, I agree with you. Anyway, I just thought we should put this up here. Here's a new name of somebody that we may hear a lot about in the future. Then we've had this this next piece here. This is, I don't know if you can scroll on down on this at all, but this is the complaint that was entered against Donald Trump and his family and his foundation, cataloging, back to, it doesn't go quite back to the flood, but it goes, way, way back into time, alleged abuses of the Trumps and the Trump Foundation, violations of New York State charity laws. And we're talking here, I think the biggest dollar amount, not that you should only care about dollar amounts, but the biggest dollar amount in this complaint that I saw was, I think, $2.5 million. There was a matter of a $60,000 portrait. There are things that on the surface look questionable.
Right.
Okay, but again, one needs to have balance. This is a hack assistant attorney general, or acting attorney general, who has subsequently been replaced by a new one, putting this thing out before the midterms, and a chance to, rattle public opinion. Went up June 14th, 2018. And it goes on and on and on and on, and it makes certain allegations. And most of them have to do with mistakes, and we know the Form 990. We know many of these reports are reports that the Clinton Foundation, and its many charities, should have filed, both the main Clinton Foundation and the Clinton Family Foundation, which we're going to talk about today. And there's a whole amount of heat here against the Trumps in the Southern District of New York, and federally, and also by the state attorney general. And there needs to be balance here. I mean, if what the Trump organization did can be proven to be as alleged in this complaint, if it's as serious as the attorney general alleges, then there should be consequences if it's proven to whatever legal standard is required in this New York court. But equally, I have personally reported several charity frauds to New York State, and what do I get back?
As have I.
Yeah, we're talking bupkis back. So the public needs to be assured in this democratic one-party state that the laws of New York are going to be fairly applied, because if the public begins to conclude that they're not going to be fairly applied,
that's the ones they choose to break.
Then many people, it's not like you want to come to New York so you can pay one of the highest sales taxes in the country, pay one of the highest personal income taxes, pay high property taxes, pay for very expensive bureaucrats who don't necessarily seem to know what they're doing. They're not compelling arguments to start a business and live here. And if you're going to prove now beyond doubt that the system is rigged against anybody who isn't in the certain wing of the Democratic Party, we could very well have a situation where New York State and city could suffer calamitous erosion in the values. So now, of course, this complaint was immediately. This is an interesting little thing from the Democratic internal people. This is sent on the 24th of this month to Democratic members of the Oversight Committee. A preview explaining why you should care about this hearing. Now, I'm sure the Republicans do the same thing when they were in the majority.
Sending out memos about why you should care about things happening in Congress. Contrary to everything else, you should care about this.
Yeah. So here's the beginning of, you're laying out a bill of particulars here. You want to make sure this gets spread far and wide. Maybe there are some legitimate concerns here. I don't know. I'm not a campaign finance law expert, for example. But this, to me, is just a smear campaign. Yeah. This is not yet risen. This is not, these are not political heroes. This is not a profile and courage moment for anybody. Mm-hmm. This is an attempt on the part of sore losers in 2016 who are especially pissed because they thought they'd rigged the general election, to discover that they lost the general election. This is an attempt by many of those people to just hurl as many slurs as possible out into the public domain, knowing full well that the captured mainstream media is just going to report this as unvarnished truth. So I think it's quite disappointing, and will be marked by historians as yet another low point. And then I know how much you love accounting for entertainment, but this is pretty funny. This is in the meant to be funny department. There's a ruling in some court that the creators of this, I'm sure you've seen this action thing, Bones, they were cheated out of $179 million. It seemed like a lot of money to...
I mean, they call it reprehensible studio fraud.
Isn't that Gap?
That's just called, that's how it's done in Hollywood.
That's generally accepted.
You did not expect to be robbed of $179 million? Oh.
Yeah.
David Boreanaz. I used to watch David Boreanaz on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but I haven't.
He was on that?
I haven't really watched TV, or certainly not this show, in quite a long time. But okay, so they got cheated out of 107. I mean, Charles, I remain convinced that Hollywood is a gigantic money laundering scheme, or at least many people in Hollywood engage in that, because there's just so many areas, so many tax strategies for making your film over here, where you're going to get this kind of tax money coming back, and you got to submit receipts to get the tax. There's all these states, I'm sure you're aware of this. Right when I had moved to Hollywood, Louisiana implemented this tax rebate thing for people making movies there, where they would give you like 30% of the money that you spent on the movie back in tax credits, and it really blew up the film industry in Louisiana in a way that I didn't like when I had just moved to California. But I got to work in Louisiana, and there's no graft going on in Louisiana.
Not in Louisiana, not New Orleans. No, of course not. Well, we have, I guess, 6 minutes until Sydney may show up. Let's fly quickly. I just want to set the next 3 pages up. I did not do more than a couple hours work here to try to find things that were in the public domain that should have excited the interest of the mainstream journalism pack to take a look at what was really going on in the Clinton Foundation. And I've laid this out in chronological order, and I don't want to pull up the links now because it'll take too much time, but we have a link, Daniel Halper's great book, Clinton Inc., which basically called the Clinton family out for running a complete fraud disguised as a charity. It was published on the 25th of July, 2014. 2 years to the day before I sent that fateful email to Judge Napolitano and James Rose. 2 years before then, there had been a book out in the public domain calling out all sorts of problems in the Clinton family that are obvious to somebody who wants to take a look at it.
I'm surprised HarperCollins would publish that.
No, they published a bunch of them. Yeah. And then I had been writing for the Washington Times, but I wrote a few pieces. I didn't put them all in here, but I wrote a bunch of pieces early on, specifically asking on the 16th of March, 2015, how come the IRS is not going to do a freaking audit of the Clinton Foundation? Because it was obvious to me that it should have been audited on March 16th, 2015. And it was that not just for the most recent year, but for the history of it. I mean, you have an entity that is, in theory, bragging about taking all kinds of government grants and is required under New York and California law to disclose particulars of those grants, but neither in the state filings or in their IRS filings through 2007, that is to say from 98 to 2007, the line government grants is zero.
Yeah.
So you make an affirmative statement, I have no government grants, and then on the memorandum of understanding effective December, in theory, 16th, or December 12th, or thereabouts, 2008, you brag about hundreds of millions of dollars in government grants. It's like something isn't right with that picture,
Well, it's like these people who go on YouTube and boast about not paying taxes.
Right.
That's not so smart.
Not so smart. So, I mean, this stuff is out early on, and I knew enough then, and I know more now, about how much paperwork flies around when you're trying to get a government grant. There should have been emails all over the place. This is just when the story about the private server comes out, right around March 4th, 2015, the revelation that there's a private server, and all of our emails went over the private servers. Okay, so where the freak are those real emails, and how come the regulators of the MOU...
Weiner has them.
No doubt does have them. And so Hillary then announces on this YouTube, by YouTube, she announces she's going to run. I issue this detailed report on the 20th of April. Jerry Corsi and I start to work on lots and lots of articles in WorldNet Daily. I think there were 20 to 25 or more, starting on the 22nd of April. And then here's Peter Schweitzer's book comes out May 5th, again alleging that there's charity fraud, but not really focusing on the charity fraud. You can go to the next page. We've gone through a lot of this stuff before, but there are multiple links here to stories. Here's one, the 18th of January 2016, and of all places, NBC News, saying, you know what? The investigators looking into Hillary Clinton's emails don't have a security clearance high enough to look at the emails they're supposedly evaluating, but we don't have a problem here. I mean, this is in January of 2016, right before the primaries are really heating up. This is in NBC News. It's not in Breitbart. It's not in Washington Times. It's not in Crowdsource the Truth, which didn't exist on January 18th, 2016, I don't think.
No.
And, nobody is gefilte fish.
What is that about?
I don't know. This is from September 1st, 2015.
Gefilte fish finds the emails?
And the surprising finds in Clinton's emails. But anyway.
I see.
Yeah.
I thought, right, she's talking about gefilte fish.
She's talking about...
so the Jews must be behind it, Charles. Obviously, it's a conspiracy.
So, I mean, if you just go back into the slide quickly, if it's okay, Jason.
Sure.
We'll see if we go to the next page. I mean, look at all these entries. Here, the 12th of June, 2016, Julian Assange says, I have information at WikiLeaks that will put Hillary Clinton in prison. And we're making an issue over, Michael Cohen is saying it's a big deal, that Roger Stone said, okay, this thing happened on June 12th, 2016. So Stone waits, he waits
7 days?
No. July.
Oh,
18.
Yeah, because I was definitely fully dialed into InfoWars at that time, and every day they were following everything
Right.
Julian Assange was saying. Everybody was.
Right, exactly. It was and you're going to make a big deal of a conference call where Roger Stone says, "I got it, boss. Get Mr. Trump on the phone. I got to tell him something. You ought to focus on Julian Assange because I'm right in the front of the pack." I mean, come on. This is June 12th.
Yeah.
And actually, I found that, fish this out, that,
It's Sydney.
oh, great. I got to put on.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, you got your headphones
got it.
there, Charles. Hello, Sydney. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
Doing very well. Let's make sure Charles can hear you, and you should be able to see him. Charles, do the headphones work right now?
Sydney, could you say something?
Testing 1, 2, 3,
okay.
4.
Okay, I'll get on top of that. Hang on a second.
Sorry, Sydney. And thanks for joining us. We look forward to having you with us for about a half hour or so, if that'll still work.
How about now, Charles?
I don't
My
hear anything.
pleasure.
Is it plugged in?
I hope it is plugged in. I so apologize for not having that ready.
There it's got. There I hear something.
You got it?
Sydney?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Nothing.
Why is that? Why is that? Why is that?
I can hear you all great.
Yeah, there should be no
Can
problem.
you hear Sydney?
I can hear Sydney.
There you go.
You got it?
I can hear you.
Okay, so then you'll be able to hear
can you
Sydney.
me now?
Now I hear you, Sydney. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great, great. We're just going to quickly finish on this slide here, where we're just taking people through 30 different pieces of evidence that are in the public domain, explaining why it was incredibly natural for Roger Stone and Donald Trump and many other people to want to see what Julian Assange said he had that would incriminate Hillary Clinton. When he said
Well,
that,
yeah, I wanted to see it. I even said, I bet the Russians have it. Let's see it.
well, have the FBI come talking to you?
No, they haven't.
Not yet?
I think they're afraid of me.
I agree with that.
They would not be the only ones. So I know you've been traveling today, Sydney, and I don't know if you had a chance to see any of the Michael Cohen self-indictment festival.
No, I have not.
Oh my gosh, I was so looking forward to your analysis. He is a self-proclaimed fool.
Oh, well, I did see that little clip because I turned the TV on when I came in the room while I was waiting, doing a couple other things. But if y'all need to do something else, I can sign off this and you can call me back. Or
No.
whatever you need to do.
We'd love having you on, Sydney. I'd love to get the latest from you. Have you turned your attention to a new book?
Well, I am. Harvey and I are working on a new book together, Harvey Silverglate.
Uh-huh.
We're working on a book on reforms,
Oh, good.
kind of like the top 10 things for criminal justice reform.
Good.
Yep.
How about making an example out of some of these corrupt criminals who still are tied one way or another to the IRS, FBI, and Department of Justice?
A few of those are mentioned in the book.
Good, good. When will this book appear?
Probably not before the fall, maybe the spring. I think it's going in the fall catalog if I can get my act together in time.
Great.
And certainly between now and then, people can go to licensedtolie.com where they can purchase Sydney's current book of that same title. And I'm just showing the website right now. That is the correct website, right, Sydney?
Yes.
And then Creeps
Or
on a
Sydney.
Mission is something else, right?
Yeah, Creeps on a Mission is the T-shirt.
Now, do you design that yourself?
Yes, well, I designed it and then told the artist what I wanted done.
Really?
Yep.
Boy, multi-talented.
Yep, I have this artistic streak I have to satisfy periodically.
That's very well done.
I designed the book cover, too.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Wow, very well done.
It's great.
So do you have a sense of whether Mueller is going to be at this for the next 2 years or whether we're going to get a report coming anytime soon?
I think there's a report coming sometime soon. I think he's run out of things to do, and I hear that his prosecutors are looking for other jobs. So I think things will be coming to a close sometime soon. He's handing things off to the districts, of course.
Well, I don't know.
Can't- much longer.
I don't know if you saw the story about the decision in the D.C., the panel of the D.C. Court of Appeals that appears to have said or ruled that the appointment of Mueller was legitimate, and now there's talk of that, being challenged. However, it would be challenged. Did you happen to see that?
I caught a little snippet of it. That's based on the appointment process, if I remember correctly or read it correctly. I think there are other challenges to be made to it. I think the whole thing should be disbanded for egregious government misconduct, and everything he's done pursuant to that should be thrown out because it was a fraud from its inception.
And that's that concept of is it fruit of the poison tree?
Fruit of the poisonous tree is a different concept that applies primarily in the Fourth Amendment area for invalid searches and seizures. And there's an exception to fruit of the poisonous tree. There's a good faith exception to that, so that if somebody thought they got a good search warrant and agents executed that warrant in good faith and then found evidence pursuant to it, that evidence would be admissible. But if there's egregious government misconduct, as there was here, ab initio, and continuing on through absolutely everything they've done, there's nothing that can save it. And that's what these folks need to be arguing.
Where would you argue that?
From beginning to end of every case he's touched.
But before which court?
All of them, the district court and then the court of appeals.
Wow.
You'd move to dismiss the indictment and all the charges against everybody for egregious government misconduct. And I don't know whether anybody's thought to do that or not, but that's what needs to be done.
Could you take that case?
Would I take that case?
Yeah. I mean, would you be one of the people who could move such a case along?
I can't right now. My plate's full, but the lawyers for Stone definitely ought to do that.
We've heard from Larry Klayman quite a bit about the lawyers for Roger Stone doing perhaps questionable things, putting him on the witness stand. Of course, Roger Stone was gagged by Amy Berman Jackson for putting out a questionable Instagram post. I don't know, Sidney, what would you say to a client of yours who is thinking about posting things about a judge presiding over their own criminal case onto Instagram?
That was definitely a bad choice on Roger's part. I think Roger should move to dismiss for selective prosecution, and I think he should move to dismiss for egregious government misconduct.
With the raid on his house, you mean?
And from the government's behavior from the inception of the case, the fraudulent FISA applications on. There was no crime to hand off to Mueller to investigate. Everything has been made up. Mueller has created crimes to prosecute. There's nothing valid about any of it. The whole thing has been an abuse of power and abuse of process from its inception.
I'm sure there are other penalties, but could a lawyer be disbarred for doing this?
It's very hard to get a lawyer disbarred for virtually anything like this, particularly a federal prosecutor. I mean, they are so protected, it's beyond imagination.
Would that be perhaps
suggest in our book is that we abolish absolute immunity for prosecutors. They need to be held to account somewhere, somehow, some way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In this book that you're working on, is it written? Is it going to be written for the profession, or is it going to be written for the public, or both?
Both.
Both. Okay, good.
It should be written so anybody can understand it.
Right.
Now, one other question about Roger Stone, Sidney. He came out and said that Michael Cohen lied today in his testimony before Congress. Is Roger Stone violating the judge's gag order to comment on this, since he's pivotally involved in all of these communications with the president and Roger Stone on the phone, etc.?
I didn't read the gag order since he's not necessarily talking about his case. He's talking about Michael Cohen's testimony, perhaps not. But he probably has, caused a little bit of concern by saying anything.
Yeah. He seems to be on thin ice with Amy Berman Jackson. Probably prudent advice would be for him to maybe not say anything at all.
Yeah, that would be prudent advice. Roger reminds me of a cartoon character. He's just a character.
And what do you think is going to happen to Rosenstein?
The sooner he's gone, the better. I don't know when his retirement kicks in. Hopefully he's got enough annual leave. He can leave soon and use his annual leave and retire, and then we'll see. You know, it could be that Rosenstein handled things better than some of us thought he did. I don't know, because we're not on the inside and we don't have access to all that information. But as far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't want the door to hit him in the career.
He's
with a
done,
spike
basically.
on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Sydney, you and I were speaking in Dallas about, I don't know if we had gotten to speak about William Barr. I feel like we've spoken about him a little bit. Oh, it must have been in D.C. when I saw you there. He's Attorney General once again, pivotally involved in all these pardons related to Iran-Contra. We've just had El Chapo stuck in jail in ADX Florence, the Supermax prison where nobody's ever going to see him again. Is this some kind of weird continuation of Iran-Contra?
I don't think so.
No?
El Chapo needs to be put where nobody can see him ever again. I can't think of anybody more dangerous in any respect than El Chapo is in more ways.
The Clintons?
Than one.
Yeah. My question is dangerous to who? Because there have been rumors and allegations that the DEA and various elements of the U.S. government have actually worked hand in glove with the Sinaloa cartel, and that El Chapo is being stuffed in this deep hole so that he doesn't talk about any of these interactions.
Well, I thought I'd heard that he had already talked about a lot of it, and hopefully he's being debriefed fully on all of that, and that would be one thing that Attorney General Barr would want to look into.
What are your thoughts and projections for William Barr as the Attorney General?
Well, the jury's still out on that one. I am cautiously optimistic. I have friends that know him well that say he is a first-rate person and that he's just exactly what we need to straighten things out. So I am hoping that they are correct.
Aren't we concerned that he was George H.W. Bush's Attorney General, and when Democrats insisted on a special counsel to investigate Bush's aid to Iraq prior to the initial invasion, that he just adamantly refused to investigate, and now it seems that, in fact, the United States may have provided anthrax and other chemical weapons to Iraq?
Actually, I know too little about that to comment on it. I was not paying attention to any of that back then. I had my head buried in my cases and was not politically savvy or attentive at all.
Oh,
Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Fair enough.
All right. I have no problem saying what I don't know.
There you go.
And then I'm familiar with the rules, which I think are sort of logic, not codified in regulations or laws, about when in banking you have a conflict of interest, and some would say never, but actually you do have conflicts of interest as a banker that need to be either cause you not to do work or cause you to handle the work in a different fashion. But I mean, how could it be that the special counsel here would put together this team that they've put together, where so many of the lawyers in this recent there's a filing today, actually, that's teased out, a 6-page filing, that is the first person signing it is Weissman, and the second person is Jeannie Rhee. And so many of these people on the special counsel team have a lot to fear from a real investigation of the Clinton Foundation for, network of frauds and crimes associated with the Clinton crime family. So many of these people have been on the other side of that coin.
Yeah, it's totally biased. That's why the investigation has no validity whatsoever.
Yeah.
I mean, if Mueller had any self-respect and decency and sense of ethics or integrity, he would have picked a balanced group of people, or lawyers completely out of D.C. that had nothing to do with any of this, that had impeccable reputations and could have gone in there and looked at it without the abject bias that everyone he picked has. I mean, between Jeannie Rhee representing the Clinton Foundation and hiding emails left and right, and Andrew Weissman being a total hack and into the Russia collusion thing from the beginning, targeting Manafort before he even went to special counsel's operation, and running the back channel with Bruce Orr involved in creating the Seal dossier and running that over to the FBI when he wasn't in the chain of command for any of that at all. I mean, he's in this up to his eyeballs. He should be disqualified from participating in any and all of it for that reason alone, and that's another reason to move to dismiss everything Mr. Weissman has touched.
Wow.
Wow.
But no one is doing that. How can something like that be initiated?
I don't know why they're not. I mean, Bruce Rogow, I think, represents Roger Stone now, and he's brilliant, so he ought to be all over that.
Huh. Interesting. Maybe people can tweet this video at him. Another person who comes up on our show pretty frequently, Sydney, and I know you've been an advocate, is Steve Stockman. What's the latest with him? How's he doing?
He is not doing well at all. He is in Fort Worth in the medical facility. I mean, he just has lost so much weight and his health is very poor.
Oh, boy.
He's, just in horrible shape. And of course, his case is now on appeal. But I'm very concerned about him. You know, the judge threw the book at him and remanded him to custody immediately upon the jury verdict being returned without even letting him stay out pending his sentencing. So and sentenced him to 10 years then on the basis of a volume of material that the government sealed. The defense doesn't even know what the government filed, which I think is another outrage.
So this seems like a life sentence for Representative Stockman.
It will be. He will die in prison if something isn't done about that. Meanwhile, Lois Lerner, the one person he tried to hold accountable for all her atrocities, is out enjoying her bonus from IRS and her retirement on Martha's Vineyard.
Wow.
That's outrageous. Who led the persecution against Stockman?
The Public Integrity section of the Department of Justice.
That's ironic.
The same group that led the prosecution against Senator Ted Stevens, and I call it the ironically named Public Integrity section.
But is there an individual that is the chief, or is it the whole division that's horrible?
I don't remember the name of the young man that was the primary prosecutor. All I can tell you is he exuded arrogance that I find absolutely intolerable.
Is there
People in the Justice need to remember that they are public servants. They work for us, and their job is to seek justice, not convictions. Narcissists need not apply.
Yeah. I really wish you would have been nominated for Attorney General, Sydney.
Well, thank you very much.
Another person you've been a huge advocate for is General Michael Flynn. And the last time I saw you, like everyone else, were quite shocked that Emmett Sullivan, what did he do? He stayed the sentencing pending that case in Virginia. Any developments in General Flynn's case?
No, I don't think so. The next thing that's scheduled is just a written status report on March 13th.
So it's coming up pretty soon.
Judge Sullivan was talking at the end of that hearing about sending some written questions to counsel for both sides, including asking the government to explain how the statements for which they've indicted Flynn were material, which is an element of the case that they have to prove. And I would love to see the answers to that question and whatever other questions he was going to ask, but I haven't heard anything about those questions being issued.
It's amazing. It's an amazing...
And that hearing was just horrible because the judge was off on the wrong track altogether, saying things that weren't true, which was beyond ironic, seeing as how this is a false statement prosecution against the most honorable man, one of the most honorable men in the country. And here you've got a federal judge who had time to prepare for the hearing, as opposed to General Flynn, who was blindsided in the interview for which he's now been charged with making false statements. And the judge had time to prepare and everything else and came out making all kinds of false statements.
And it was particularly surprising given Emmett Sullivan's history. He's generally a well-regarded judge, seen as an even-handed, fair-minded man.
Yep, he was way off base that day.
You know, it's interesting because shortly after that, I was at another hearing in the same courthouse with Larry Klayman. Judge Leon was presiding over the Corsi versus Mueller, I think it was. And Judge Leon ran out of the room after announcing that he was recusing himself from the case, and he didn't find it to be related litigation, and he was putting it back into the random selection pool. I don't know if you've been following that at all, but of course, Dr. Corsi, through Larry Klayman, is the only person to actually directly challenge Robert Mueller's authority, aside from this thing that's just been dismissed, basically.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm glad Dr. Corsi's been doing that.
It's been a difficult struggle for him. Charles, you were going to say
The only
something?
way to deal with these guys is to fight back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and well, we just got through saying on the early portion of the show that we're all reasonably patient people. I think you have to be patient to get through this complicated life. But would you agree with the statement that if Donald Trump's team doesn't move against the swamp before November 2020, he's not going to get reelected?
Oh yeah, he needs to do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Like in the next 6 months. I mean, I'm ready for that information to be declassified. I think they've been sitting on it long enough, and there's a lot in there that we need to know. So I'm hoping that all that happens sometime soon.
Well, what we heard through the scuttlebutt of various reporters all over the political spectrum is supposedly they were all geared up to do it, but then the deep state said, listen, the interest of certain foreign powers, and the suspicion is it's the UK and Israel, don't...
I think it's the UK and Australia actually called up and said, please don't do it.
Well, in my mind, that's every reason to do it.
Yeah, why does Donald Trump care what other people say? It doesn't seem to be
Right.
consistent with his normal behavior.
Especially also, Sydney, because if you name the UK and Australia, those are two friends, allies of the United States, long-standing allies of the United States, that are deeply, in my mind, implicated not only in committing charity fraud through the Clinton Foundation and other foundations, but then in, I believe, obstructing a real inquiry into this charity fraud. Why, for God's sake, why would you, as in Donald Trump's case, why would you say, oh yeah, because the American public will find out just how crooked you allies have been,
Right.
we want to protect the American public from, it just doesn't make any sense.
No, I agree with you. I wouldn't have stopped on that basis either. I would have said, listen, you made your bed, you can lie in it.
Right.
I mean, they literally conspired with our intelligence community over here to help frame this president. And they should be outed for it just like everybody else who had any role in that.
Right, and actually, I mean, the United States, of course, is a gigantic economy. Even China's isn't that big compared to ours. And when you start talking about Australia and the UK, I think there are other state actors like Norway and France, Ireland, some other ones, Sweden, Holland, Germany, et cetera, all saw advantage in this unregulated globalism, and all saw the threats posed by Donald Trump if he did win, because we see what he's doing so far against unregulated globalism, promoting Americanism. And of course they're the people who are going to resist. I mean, the American public needs to be united in outrage over foreign government actors, allies. It's bad enough Russia, you expect the worst out of a potential enemy, but allies should not be trying to work with the Democrats to rig a general election and then hide that truth from the American public.
Exactly.
That's all they do. That's their business.
Yeah.
So you're headed out to give a speech tonight?
No, I've got some other media to do, and I'm at CPAC, and just a lot of stuff going on.
How's everything going there at CPAC?
I haven't even had a chance to find out yet.
Wow, okay. I know you're really busy, Sydney, so we definitely appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. I want to remind everyone that they can purchase the book, License to Lie, from the website, licensetolie.com. I believe people can get a signed copy of this, correct, Sydney?
Yes, they can. There are a few first edition copies left, maybe about 40. I just found another box the other day, so there are about 40 first edition copies left, and otherwise I'm on the 5th printing.
Wow. That's really, and I'll just to give you a brief commercial, I am actually a collector of first editions, and an avid reader. And I your writing style in this book is so great because it reads. This is a positive comment. It reads like a thriller. You can't stop reading it, and it's somewhat dense topics actually, but it's really well written, Sydney.
And I think, Sydney, somebody got Charles a signed first edition copy for Christmas.
Yeah, thank you there, Jason. It was for Hanukkah. It was for Hanukkah.
Right. Sorry, I forgot about that. Another Jewish
I thought
conspiracy.
you got a signed copy, Charles, in New York ages ago.
You did, but I didn't.
Oh, I didn't.
But I did mention that I collect. Thanks, Sydney.
Oh, sorry about that.
I did mention that I am an avid collector of signed first editions.
There you go. Well, Sydney, thank you so much for appearing with us tonight. I really appreciate it. Your insights are invaluable, and look forward to having you back on as soon as you're available.
My pleasure. Thank you. And please tell everybody to watch the Mark Levin special on my YouTube channel, too. Everybody needs to watch that. And if you have an email list, send it out to everybody you know. We need like 1 million people to watch that before the Mueller report comes out.
We will do that.
Okay, and people are just going to search Sidney Powell on YouTube. Is that it?
Yep.
Wonderful.
And it's also connected to my SydneyPowell.com site, and it ought to be connected to the License to Lie site also, but
Great.
hopefully you can find it without any problem.
Yeah, people are going to have, there we go, we've got it right there. Sidney Powell on YouTube, so people can watch Sidney Powell and read about Sidney Powell and just be Sidney Powell all the time.
More than you can possibly stand.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Sidney. We'll speak to you real soon. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sydney.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. There we go, Charles. Sidney Powell. That's great.
Well done.
Boy, we get some amazing guests on this show, don't we?
We do. Thanks so much to you for coordinating all this, and to Sydney for taking time out of her very busy day to join us. Yeah. So we can now, I think I'll get us through in this next little bit here, this final bit, quickly. We did this page.
Oh yeah, I went back to...
and if we could just stop here, the next page here.
There we go.
We were on this issue that Julian Assange was out there saying, look, I did it. And before that, Judge Knapp on the 8th of June mentions my name in a Fox, this is a Fox thing, saying, that he believes there's bombshell Clinton Foundation information coming, 8th of June, 2016. By the 12th, Assange is saying what he did. By the 29th of June, I only just noticed this morning, I remember it, but I didn't remember the date. The Daily Mail published excerpts from Jerry Corsi's book, Partners in Crime, which was based on my research. On the 29th of June, 2016. The Daily Mail in the UK, a gigantic story.
What's the significance of that date?
It's well before the 25th of June, July rather, when I send the email around to Napolitano and to James Rosen saying people need to get over and sit down with Assange.
It's not that easy to do. I mean, obviously Roger Stone, way higher profile than me, but Julian Assange didn't seem to want to meet anybody. And I got to tell you, the little bit I know about Roger Stone and the little bit I know about Assange, I don't think they strike me as the kind of, I'm not sure that Assange would be hanging out and talking to Roger Stone and sharing information.
But my theory of why I sent it to Rosen and Napolitano is I realized that they worked for this operation that a guy called Rupert Murdoch, who had some considerable influence in the United Kingdom, owning the Sunday Times of London, owning a big piece in Sky News, owning this, owning that newspaper and that newspaper, and being a media mogul and billionaire, kind of felt like also being originally Australian, kind of felt like, if Murdoch wanted to get to Assange, he probably could do that, given investigators all over the world. So it is entirely, then on the 12th of July, I'd forgotten this timing exactly, Marsha Blackburn's staff, I'd been working with them for some time to try to get a letter co-signed by Congress saying what the F is going on with this Clinton Foundation. In the letter, she calls it lawless, right? This is the 12th of July.
Should
full
we look at
2
that
weeks.
letter?
It's in there. A full 2 weeks before the email that I sent to Rosen and Napolitano. 2 weeks before. This is in the public domain. There are articles about it.
It's lawless, Charles.
It is. Well, it certainly is. Another nice picture of Hillary.
Yeah. She's looking rather lawless right there. Oh my goodness,
Give me
Hillary
some
Clinton.
Chardonnay. Anyway, and then the same day, actually, this, I don't know what News Punch is, but here's a story that's really interesting on the same day.
Somebody put a turd in the News Punch, Charles.
But if we go down this is the actual letter. We've seen this before. Put this up here. Keep going down. Yeah. Here's the actual letter from somebody seeking leniency for Epstein, in which, among other things, this is July 6, 2007. Now, let's think about this for a second. July 6, 2007 is half a year before the primaries started in the 2008 Democrat presidential cycle. You know, it would make a lot of sense to rush into a deal if you're Hillary Clinton's people, where Jeffrey Epstein is not going to be in the front page because he's going to be in house arrest, and there are going to be all kinds of agreements. So we get this out of the way, is what they were trying to do. But in this article here, it mentions me actually, but they talk about how Epstein took credit, or his lawyers took credit, for the Clinton Foundation creating the Clinton Global Initiative. That's kind of like School of Michael Cohen. Right?
Well,
why would you, as you consider my sentencing, you know, I'd like you to just consider the fact that I organized the largest criminal charity fraud and money laundering in the history of American politics and economics.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, and for that, I think I deserve, you know, extra credit and a suspended sentence.
Right.
You know?
It's totally bizarre, Charles.
Yeah. So then on the 22nd here of July, the IRS head, the John Koskinen, confirmed that the Dallas office of the IRS would indeed be investigating the Clinton Foundation. All right, so we know, here's the IRS saying, you know, for the lamestream journalists, here's the IRS itself saying, this is serious enough that we're gonna investigate it, okay? And the Dallas office is gonna do that. And we have a lot of people saying, lots of different people saying, you know what, this Clinton Foundation is a fraud and a mess. And I'm saying, from my experience looking at these kind of things, when you try to get money out of a government or a rich donor for a foundation, there's a massive paper trail. There's due diligence from the potential donor, there are after-action reports, there are complaints, there are all kinds of, there's plans, there's, you know, sometimes monthly reports, certainly quarterly reports, there are audits, there are special consulting studies. None of this stuff had emerged in the dump in March of 2016, in the dump of Secretary of State emails. None of this stuff had emerged yet. So we all knew, I mean, wait a minute, if Hillary's turned over her, quote, all her work-related emails, and there's a memorandum of understanding while she's Secretary of State attempting to regulate the Bill Clinton exercise called the Clinton Foundation, the conflicts thereof, and Hillary Clinton's ability as Secretary of State to make lives miserable or very happy around the world, both for American players, for foreign players, awarding contracts, putting on people on sanctions lists or taking them off. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of power that the Secretary of State has in league with an administration that seemed to be willing to do the bidding of the Clintons.
Yeah.
You know, so it was to say that it is unreasonable for Roger Stone and Donald Trump and anybody in the trying to win the presidency in 2016 to be interested in the state of play with the Clinton Foundation is preposterous. I mean, it makes sense that the mainstream press would take this viewpoint because they have no interest in this. They know that if you're going to do this type of work, not only will the true fraud come out, but then the sensible people are going to say, why the hell am I reading the New York Times? You know, it's just propaganda for certain people who are globalists, who, you know, maybe they're progressive, maybe they're not progressive, they're corporatists, they're obviously mostly going to vote for Democrats. That's not news, that's not journalism, it's just propaganda. And so it is entirely reasonable to have done all this. I had done, on the 27th of July here, you see this Red State piece. Myra Adams had done a bunch of pieces about me. And if you could hit the link, Jason.
Red State?
Yeah. It's immodest to hit the link, but you know, this appears on July 27, 2016. I hadn't seen the title, but I'd obviously been talking to Myra Adams. You know, this is 2 days after I send the email to Judge Knapp and James Rosen. Myra had written several pieces going all the way back to 2015 about the Clinton Foundation.
Well, Charles, for all the people who say you aren't doing anything, they should read this thing. You're a hero since 2016. It's the other people that aren't doing anything.
Right. So, but she's asking the right question. What took the IRS so long, right? And if we, Blackburn's letter went on July 15th, signed by another 63 House Republicans, so 64 in total. One to the IRS, one to the FBI, one to the Federal Trade Commission.
They're busy.
They're busy. Yeah, we're trying to get Hillary Clinton elected here. You know,
Yeah.
that's what we got to do.
We expect them to actually do something. I mean, that's a little bit unreasonable.
And then here's a piece in the Sunday Times of London, referenced by Michael Smith, on the 8th of August, 2016, where the Sunday Times of London, owned by Murdoch's organization, the entire piece, since the Sunday Times of London has a paywall, what he did is he copied it. But this is a prestigious operation, and by this fellow Ian Day, I think, who's since left. August 8th, 2016, says that Sunday Times has confirmed that the FBI is investigating the Clinton Foundation. August 8th, 2016. So if you were investigating it August 8th, 2016, where are the records of that?
Well, but they're specifically investigating
You're right.
it over its ties with Russian oligarchs.
Right.
And Silicon Valley. So they're talking about, what is that thing called?
They're talking about Clinton Cash here.
Well, Scopoli or whatever that.
Oh, Skolkovo.
Skolkova, yeah.
So, far from being an outrage that people were talking about this in 2016, or that I had sent the email around on July 25th, the real 2016, the real outrage is that Maggie Haberman, who I don't know, she was at the Times by then, Peter Baker and all these hotshots in the New York Times and the people at the Washington Post, their idea was just, we're going to coast, man. We're going to get Hillary Clinton's going to be...
The Washington Coast.
The Washington Coast. We're going to coast right in, and she's going to get elected. We know how she rolls. We know how easy it is to play ball with the Clintons. And it's going to be a gravy train.
It's got to be an 8-ball if you want to play ball with the Clintons.
That's right. So now we're going to talk a little bit about a new Clinton Foundation. We've mentioned it in the past, but it's come to light that there's some new things. Just for... people's benefits, I am actually a Redist, as we've talked about. Red is bad. There's an entity called the Clinton Family Foundation, capital T, Clinton Family Foundation. It was created in December 2001, it was organized. It didn't receive tax exemption until March of 2002. But nonetheless, the Clinton family took a substantial deduction for a donation of I want to say $700,000 or so in 2001. This chart and this discussion is just going to address, though there are many, many problems with the organization and the operation of the Clinton Family Foundation, in my view, all we're going to focus upon here is the period of returns for 2013, 14, 15, 16, and 17. Okay? Now, in this period, at all times, the Clinton family, well, really from November 2nd, 2013 onwards, the Clinton family had illegally seized control of the Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation on November 2nd, 2013, through an amendment in the bylaws we've discussed in the past. This thing, the Clinton Family Foundation, is a far smaller version of the Gates Foundation. It's a private foundation. Private foundations typically are authorized to make grants only to, or primarily to, public charities. A public charity has to be independent of a family, of a person. It has to represent the broad interests of the public at large. It is not a vehicle to advance the Clinton family. It's not a vehicle to make them rich. It's not a vehicle to seed their political ambitions. A public charity cannot be controlled, in short, by the Clintons. Okay? Yet, of the total grants that were made by this entity, based in Chappaqua, the total grants were $9.7 million. The filings for this thing show that 46%, $4.5 million of the grants made just in this short period of 5 years were illegal. And we're going to show you why they were illegal.
How many? What percent?
46%. The number at the top in the first line, 4.5 million out of 9.7 million, or 46%,
were illegal.
Were illegal. I'm going to explain why.
That counts as more good than bad.
Yeah, more bad than good.
Well, 54% were good.
Yeah, but that's before we get to the second stuff. And in addition, on their personal tax returns, 100% of the declared revenues of a pass-through entity called WJC LLC were income derived from, in the case of Laureate, a joint venture partner, an illegally constructed joint venture partner, for-profit enterprise that was in a joint venture created, in theory, called the Clinton Global Initiative University that never lawfully existed. Bill derives $9.3 million in only 2013, 14, and 15. They was not making money off them in 16, 17. We don't have their personal tax returns for 16 and 17 yet because Hillary hasn't decided to run. Eventually, if she does decide to run, we'll get it. So all we know is that Bill derived income of 9.3 from Laureate and another 4.4 million from this entity GEMS, which is another for-profit high school chain, international high school chain, in which the promoter of that GEMS has a foundation called the Varkey Foundation, V-A-R-K-E-Y. We've talked about that in the past, and Bill is a director of that.
Of a high school foundation while he's flying on Jeffrey Epstein's jet? I would be very careful of that high school.
So here we have the Clinton Family Foundation declares total grants of $9.7 million out from the foundation, but Bill Clinton, from just 2 foundation donors with which he's tied and doesn't explain these links, earns personally $13.7 million in 3 out of the 5 years where the foundation gives away 9.7. This should have been disclosed at the Clinton Family Foundation level on their tax returns, these relationships, at the Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation level, at the Clinton Global Initiative level, at the Clinton Health Access Initiative level. Any charity where Bill Clinton figured large should have to have disclosed these personal payments that we know about, the 13.7 million. There's nothing, you could take this analysis a lot further. You could look at every single speech payment that either Clinton may have received in this time frame and then test to see whether any of those speech payments were made by donors to the Clinton Foundation directly.
Weren't they all?
Many were, right? And so the magnitude of this, remember I said that the biggest number in the Trump Foundation, New York State thing, which goes way back in time, okay, the biggest number there was 2.5 million. Here we're talking about 13.7 million of illegal, undisclosed income from donors to the Clinton Foundation, the parent Clinton Foundation, and we're talking about that almost half of all the grants made in this pivotal period were made to entities that were not public charities or were illegally described as such. I'm going to show you that. Now, in addition, the Clintons, they have this problem with audits. They don't like getting audits done. So just to remind them, in New York, this is a requirement. You have to have a copy of an independent accountant's audit report and financial statements with notes prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, not on Mars, not in Europe, not in Australia or Nigeria or Papua New Guinea, but generally accepted accounting principles used actually in the United States of America. If they have total revenue more than 250, and every year here they had revenue more than 250, there are no audits on file. BKD wasn't available, so what do? They get a law firm, Hogan's Lovell. A partner signs, a partner of Hogan's Lovell, we'll leave his name out of it, we can show you how to get these returns in a second, signs these returns for all these years and says, when asked where are the books and records of the Clinton Family Foundation, they're at this law firm.
Isn't having a law firm do your tax audit like having a dentist do your brain surgery?
Well, it depends. Sometimes there are very good law firms that actually do have on staff decent accountants, etc. But the requirement under New York law, the way I read it, and again, I'm not a lawyer, is that you have to get an auditing firm. Right. Lawyers don't do generally accepted accounting principle audits. Those have to be performed by certified public accountants. And as far as I can tell, there's no audit on file in New York State for this Clinton Foundation. Now, if you want to see anything about this Clinton Foundation, you just go to this, don't pull up the link, but this is the link where you can punch in the name, the Clinton Family Foundation, you'll find the filings. If you want to check and see when this Clinton Family Foundation registered with the New York Secretary of State, okay, it didn't register, it was created December 4th, 2001 in theory, but it only registered with New York State around the time it got its federal tax exemption. So I think, lawyers can advise whether the actual creation of this thing in late 2001, early 2002 was done lawfully. And then for the presidential tax returns, you could get all the candidates at this site if you want to see them. That's how you find.
Except Trump?
except, well, Trump 1 year. 1 year where somebody
And
leaked it.
now people in the comments are telling me that Bernie is refusing to show his taxes. I don't think it's going to matter. I think Bernie might not
Right.
get as far this time around as he did last time. Charles, we had a guest on earlier today who was talking about someone named Zantop as being a donor to the Clinton Foundation. Have you ever heard that name?
I'll look into it. How do you spell it?
Zantop.
I'll look into that. It's the first I've heard of it.
I've never heard of that either.
So we'll fly, these are the balances slides. This is just year by year for the doubters who want to say that there are no facts. Let's look at page 8. Okay. This is interesting. So in May of 2014, they filed their 2013 return, and they claim that this New York entity sent $300,000, or 16% of the total donations, to William J. Clinton Foundation in Little Rock, Arkansas, at 1200 President Clinton Avenue. But the name of the Clinton Foundation was changed on roughly 9 April 2013 to Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation.
Maybe that's what Obama was talking about. Change.
Hope and trade. But so maybe this means that the Clinton Foundation, the Family Foundation, sent the $300,000 prior to 9th of April 2013 to an entity in Little Rock across state lines from New York, where the Clinton Family Foundation was based. On the other hand, what the FBI warns about in its charity fraud memoranda and website disclosures is foundations that have multiple names in multiple locations. And then, I'm not saying we know this happened, but I'm certainly saying there's no audit, so no accounting firm has checked this. I would want to see the wire transfers and bank statements for the Clinton Family Foundation and the Clinton Foundation to just see when did this $300,000 actually hit the books of the Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation, or did it go into a dormant account of the William J. Clinton Foundation, and did it just get siphoned off? I want to see actual proof that the $300,000 actually left the Clinton Family Foundation in New York State and ended up in Little Rock, and I want to understand why it was sent to an account for a piece of the Clinton Foundation whose name had been changed on the 9th of April 2013 to a different name. All right? And they falsely claim in the donations in this report, in the 990, the IRS 990, the PF form, you're asked in every donation, identify your relationship between the Clinton Family Foundation and the recipient. In this case, William J. Clinton Foundation. Nothing. Crickets, nothing. Then it asks, is the recipient a public charity? And they write in PC, yes, a public charity. I don't think it was a validly operated public charity at that point. The Clintons controlled Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation from the 2nd of November 2013, if you can believe that the legal paperwork that was sent in actually worked. And a lot of their filings were basically wrong. So that's one problem. The second problem is they claim 3% of the donations went to this entity, University of Arkansas, Sturgis Hall, at that address. Well, when you go into the Little Rock site, in the Arkansas site, to try to search for such an entity, there is no such legal entity called University of Arkansas, Sturgis Hall. Okay?
That's like what they did with Harvard in Massachusetts.
Right, yeah. I mean, so you just invent, this is what can happen when you have a conflicted set of charities where no one's really checking anything, because the whole point of it is just to launder money, to lower the Clintons' personal tax liabilities maybe. And who knows if this money actually didn't round trip. You claim that it went into this charity, and then you have to just take it right back out. So you get a deduction from your charity, and you turn, in theory, legitimate money into missing money that can be used for whatever purpose you want. Because you then take it, you drain this William J. Clinton Foundation account, and nobody's the wiser because nobody's auditing it properly. Okay? And in the case of Sturgis Hall, we've talked about this before, I'm mindful of time. An elderly couple, wonderful elderly couple, died with a lot of money and thought, they're going to leave this money behind in a charity that was administered from Texas, now by everyone originally connected with the charity is long dead, and supposed to go to Little Rock, and supposed to go to Arkansas and Texas, and they signed up to give $3.75 million stretched out over time to the Clinton Foundation for the Clinton School of Public Service. There is no paperwork on file that I've been able to find regularizing the relationships among the Clinton Foundation, the University of Arkansas Foundation, the University of Arkansas, the Clinton School of Public Service, the City of Little Rock, and the state of Arkansas. I don't find any paperwork on file explaining how this Clinton School of Public Service actually came into being, what legal agreements may have been entered into, because the building, the Sturgis Hall, is on the grounds of the 27 acres City of Little Rock lease, where the Clinton Foundation is right there. So there has to be some variance in the lease agreement. I don't see that. I don't see any agreement with the City of Little Rock. I don't see any agreement with the National Archives. I don't see any conflict agreement. I don't see any disclosures about how much money the two deans, Skip Rutherford and then David Pryor, and then Skip Rutherford, who were affiliated with the Clinton Foundation, Rutherford as president, Pryor as vice president and trustee. I don't see any disclosures on file about how much they may have been paid by the art university, whether they got benefits, whether they got travel expenses. None of that is disclosed. And it would all have to be, should have been disclosed at the Clinton Family Foundation level in their PF forms. And depending on the states, New York State does ask very tough questions in their annual reports, in their questionnaires, and in the statute about any potential diversions, potential quid pro quo payments, potential personal compensation, which is called, by insiders, which is called enormement, or private gains. And this is just 2013. Let's look quickly at 2014. Same deal here, only the money's bigger. Now, in 2015, May of 2015, this is just as Hillary's ramping it up to run for president. This time they give $1.865 million to this William J. Clinton Foundation, which again, that was not its name at any time during 2014. There's no reason to write a check to this entity. Its name had been changed to Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation. A reason maybe to hide it is that you have to admit in the New York State filing that concerning the Clinton Family Foundation, you would have to admit that the Clinton family controlled the entity which the Clinton Family Foundation sent money to. A transparent, I would argue, violation of the law. You can't say, take it on your personal tax deduction, make a deduction to the Clinton Family Foundation, have that entity turn around, write a check to a public charity that is not a public charity to be used, who knows why, during a period of time where Hillary Clinton has a pressing need for more money because she's running for president.
Wow.
And again, they do the same Sturgis deal. They give $100,000 this time, for all the reasons we've talked about before. That was not done correctly. Let's go to 2015, to the videotape. They do it again. This time they give $1.5 million. This is Hillary's running for president. She's in a tough fight. And they make the filing for 2015 for the Clinton Family Foundation just before she gives up the ghost. Remember, she in that early meeting, June 5th or thereabouts, 2016, she concedes in the Dianne Feinstein, around the time of the Dianne Feinstein meeting in Dianne Feinstein's house with Barack Obama. But at some point during 2015, another $1.5 million from the Clinton Family Foundation goes to this entity that should have been dormant. Another $75,000 goes to Sturgis. Let's see what happens in 2016. This is May 2017. Donations are drying up. There's not as much money. She lost badly. Comey has now been fired in May of 2017. Mueller gets reappointed. So they just send a small amount. Donations drop from the Clinton Family Foundation, and $75,000 goes to Sturgis. But how many different accounting firms and law firms and consulting firms and independent types and trustees and executives, how many different people decided not to go down the rabbit hole here and say to the former president and the aspiring president, you can't do this. You can't have Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton be the only officers and directors of the Clinton Family Foundation, controlling that, and cause that thing to turn around and give money to this crooked Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation that breaks the law right and left from inception, and it has no audits, and is leaky as hell, and Bill's getting all this personal compensation that they're not disclosing to anybody. You can't do this. You can't be running it as Hogan Lovells. You can't be keeping the books and records of this fraud in your offices and not have, you know, an independent accounting firm check all this stuff. The conflicts here are massive.
Yeah.
And then let's just go to the final year, and we're almost going to keep it right to the minute. This one's really good. And this, I mean, by good, I mean bad. So on May 3rd, 2018, yet another false and materially misleading report. This time they say they gave 46%, $500,000 to something called the Clinton Foundation, with offices are at 1271 Avenue of the Americas, 42nd floor, New York, New York. There is no such entity.
We've never been there to that one, have we?
I've been by
6th
there.
Avenue?
But the point is, there is nothing called the Clinton Foundation. I've given you the portal to check by that name in New York. Now, there is something in Arkansas. You have a right to use the fictitious name, the Clinton Foundation in Arkansas, but not in New York. Not during 2017. So how did they actually cash that check? Or did they just say they gave the money? And, you know, the Clinton Family Foundation and the Clintons are better off, you know, maybe, depending on how their personal taxes worked in that year. They derived a benefit claiming a donation to an entity that legally doesn't exist in New York. But, you know, going back to the question of balance, we have the high hootenanny going on here with the mainstream media and shifty Adam Schiff and, you know, allies in the Senate and elsewhere, going all over, jumping on Donald Trump's grave for the Trump Foundation. And sitting right under our nose, Donald Trump, when all this was going on, Donald Trump wasn't the junior senator from New York. I mean, Donald Trump, in theory from New York, I mean, Donald Trump wasn't the Secretary of State during this long period of time, subject to public corruption, strictures, and all this kind of stuff. And we're going to have an acting attorney general following the elected attorney general, the scumbag Schneiderman, who had to leave in disgrace. You get an acting, he you know, hates Trump.
But the acting attorney general is acting like a jerk.
Right. And so first Schneiderman behaves reprehensibly. He has to leave.
Yeah.
He's replaced by another ideologue. They launch this suit. They publicize it to try to hurt Trump around the world in the midterms. And yet they exercise prosecutorial discretion not to go after these Clinton Foundation frauds. Excuse me, it's outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, it's more like prosecutorial misconduct. And I was glad that Sydney spoke quite a bit about that. She's one of the few lawyers in the country who's pushing that notion of holding prosecutors and judges accountable.
It's a good thing.
Well, it's the obvious way that it should be. How could there not be corruption the way it is now?
Right. So with that, Jason, almost to the minute, we don't even have another This Just In.
Well, we covered a lot of the current breaking news with regard to Michael Cohen when Sydney was on. That was great to have her here with us. Love having Sydney on the show. Charles, I want to remind everybody that Crowdsource the Truth is viewer supported. So if people are watching, if they watch the show all the time, if they watch any of the shows that I do all the time, they really need to become a sponsor. I cannot keep doing this without sponsorship, and people can do that by going to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. People can also send one-time sponsorship to paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. It's really the only way the show earns any money. I have foregone any corporate sponsors, and there is Super Chat available on Crowdsource the Truth too, but we don't really focus on that. Google takes a lot of that. The direct sponsorship from the viewers is the best way to keep any undue financial influence out of Crowdsource the Truth, and I really do need people's sponsorship now. The sponsorship in particular is under attack. David Swigert has been sending letters daily making false statements to military and law enforcement entities and CCing those to patreon.com in an effort to get them to defund Crowdsource the Truth. And we hear this happening to people all the time for bogus reasons, so it's very destructive what he's trying to do. It's curious why he would try to do that. He wants to stop us from bringing forward information about political corruption, corruption in the legal system. He wants to generate false stories. pin them on me, and then go make false statements. So people really need to get on board with sponsoring the show if they want this to stick around, because it's a lot of hard work, even off camera, just to keep everything going. So I appreciate all the generous Patreon sponsors. I do not appreciate those that are bringing fraudulent and strategic lawsuits against public participation, which is what these lawsuits are. Hopefully they'll be defeated and finished very soon. And with that, Charles, we have 6 seconds until it's exactly 2 hours. Thanks for another great show.
Thank you.
I'll see everybody tomorrow. Tomorrow is Thursday, so that means we're going to have Scott Bennett and Kevin Shipp. It's like a wham-bam day of military intelligence guys, so that'll be great. I'll see everybody tomorrow. Thanks for watching.